Hey, what's up guys? Joker here, and I hope you are all doing well. Today we are going to be taking a look at the AMD Wraith Prism CPU cooler and comparing it directly with the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4, which was recently released just like the new Ryzen lineup of CPUs that became available yesterday. The 2700X, which I'm going to be using in this comparison, comes along with the Wraith Prism cooler, which is a gorgeous looking stock cooler, easily the best looking stock cooler that probably has ever been released. And yeah, I wanted to do a comparison with a really good quality tower heatsink in the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4, which I was using in this system. So we're going to be doing a head-to-head here with these, kind of taking a look at the temperatures and also how loud these coolers are as well, because that's certainly going to be a factor for a lot of people. And really the question that I hope to answer by the end of this video is it worth it for someone that is trying to put together a system build to go out and buy a dedicated tower heatsink compared to just what's coming right out of the box along with the CPU? Because AMD has done a good job with that in improving these coolers since last year with the Ryzen CPUs, and now this year they've added the Wraith Prism to the lineup, which is kind of a updated version of the Wraith Max, really, so it's kind of similar to that. But yeah, for a lot of people, this could be a good option to just have to save some money on their budget. If they're trying to, part together a system and you're working on like $1,000 budget or something, let's say, and, you don't have to factor in $30, $50, $100, whatever it is, for a CPU cooler. The Dark Rock 4 is $75. I'll be sure to leave a link to that down in the description below over to Newegg if you do want to pick one up, as well as to the Ryzen 2700X if you're interested in grabbing one of those too, as they are available now. They're selling for $329, so pretty, it's not super duper expensive, but it's definitely one of the higher end mainstream processors, and it's an absolute monster, as you saw in the video yesterday where we benchmarked it in a whole bunch of games. If you missed that video, you could definitely go back and check it out. So first we're going to get into temperature testing, and then we'll talk about just how loud these CPU coolers both are. As far as the testing methodology is concerned, I was using the same system, the same processor and everything between both testing. I was using the 2700X, as I previously mentioned. I was testing that at its stock speed. I didn't have it overclocked at all, but if you saw my review yesterday, you know that there's not a ton of overclocking headroom on these things anyway, so I really doubt that the cooler would be a limiting factor in that in one way or the other. These things just really can't overclock that well, sadly enough. So I left it at stock speeds. The RAM was pushed up to 3400 megahertz, which is what the Sniper X kit does that I have in the system here. I ended up doing two different rounds of testing. The first one that I did was IDA64, which is pretty straightforward. It just takes the CPU and it runs it at 100% max load on every single core, being that this is an 8-core CPU. It's got all 8 cores pinned at 100%. So not too common that you're probably going to see that in normal workloads, unless you're doing something like video rendering and things along those lines, maybe using Blender. Then you could definitely see them, pinned up to 100%. But in gaming, you're probably not going to see that very often at all, unless you're playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Origins. And yeah, after running for 25 minutes on IDA64, the Wraith Prism settled at 83.7 degrees Celsius, so certainly getting quite toasty. And the Dark Rock 4 did keep it quite a little bit cooler. It was a 6-degree difference here, coming in at 77.6 degrees Celsius on the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4. And as I said, that was for 25 minutes on IDA64, so we're looking at a roughly 6-degree difference here between the two different coolers. The next test I did was rather interesting. What I wanted to do was kind of illustrate the temperatures in sort of a time fashion. I don't know, I'm losing my words here. Basically what I did was I loaded up The Witcher 3 and I just stared off into the distance so that I could watch the day-night cycle kind of go by, and you can kind of see the time passing. This test ended up running for 20 minutes, and because Witcher 3 really wasn't impacting the CPU all that much, it was only getting around 20 to 25% usage in this test. What I did to get the CPU completely maxed out was I actually tabbed out of the game right before I started the test, and I loaded up the CPU-Z stress test, which also pushes the cores to 100%, just like IDA64. So I let that run in the background while the game was then also up, and then I recorded that. I also captured frame rate so we can get some average and 1% lows on this. as well. So with the Witcher 3 test with CPU-Z running in the background, the Wraith Prism ended up coming out at 81 degrees Celsius, while the Dark Rock 4 was at 75 degrees Celsius. So actually a little bit cooler than what we saw on IDA 64, which I thought was pretty interesting. But once again, we're seeing about a 6-degree difference here between the Wraith Prism and the Dark Rock 4. So that's really what your takeaway from this could be, is that 6-degree difference is what you're looking at. So if you want to shave 6 degrees off your temperature, then you should probably look at picking up a tower heatsink like the one here from Be Quiet. Now, as I said, I also measured the FPS for 1% low in averages during this test run on The Witcher 3 throughout the entire run, and it was actually a pretty decent difference here in terms of the frame rate. So on the Dark Rock 4, ended up getting an average of 55 FPS with a 1% low of 33, while the Wraith Prism got an average of 50 FPS and a 1% low of 30. So having that 6-degree difference on the CPU actually did impact the frame rates. And this wasn't like a short benchmark run. Like I said, I let Fraps go ahead and capture the average 1% low in the background during the entire test. So we were looking at about a 15 to 20 minute run there with that going, and 5 FPS is definitely nothing to sneeze at, so that's something worth considering as well, on top of just the 6-degree difference. Now, when it comes to sound, certainly that's going to be a factor for a lot of people, as well, as I previously mentioned at the start of the video, and no doubt the Be Quiet cooler is living up to its name, as it is a fair bit quieter compared to the Wraith Prism. I'll go ahead and play a sound test now for both of the different coolers, and if you're wondering why the camera is angled so low, it's because I have a shotgun mic which sits about 2 to 3 inches above the camera, so that's why it's kind of pointing downward, is because the shotgun mic is going directly at the CPU cooler from about 6 to 8 inches away, which is definitely a lot closer than most of you are going to be if you happen to be using the PC. So yeah, here we go. We'll go start with the Be Quiet, and then we'll work into the Wraith Prism so you guys can hear the sound difference between the two different coolers. So yeah, the Wraith Prism definitely a lot more audible when compared to the Be Quiet, and we could actually measure this as well because I looked at it in Sony Vegas when I was playing back the footage. There was about a 10 decibel difference between the Wraith Prism and the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4. If I loaded up Sony Vegas and I put in these video clips with the audio playing in the background, I was able to see the Wraith Prism sitting around -36 to -39 dB, while the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4 was somewhere around -45 decibels. So, like I said, we're seeing about a 10 decibel difference between the two different coolers, and if you listen to those clips previously, you could certainly hear that for yourself as well, as the Wraith Prism does get a bit louder, and actually sitting in the room and, being near the cooler and everything, when I had the side panel on the case, which I did have on there for all of my testing, it wasn't really that loud at all, honestly, but the Be Quiet, was almost whisper quiet, I would say. I mean, you could hear the Wraith Prism, but it's not really that loud and annoying where it's going to probably distract most of you. But the Be Quiet was definitely noticeably, quieter, as it lived up to its name. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our testing on the Wraith Prism and the Be Quiet Dark Rock 4. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, as always, on the testing. If the results were what you had expected to see out of these two different coolers, if they were better or worse one way or the other. If you're going to be picking up the 2700X, has this convinced you that you need to go out and pick up a dedicated tower heatsink, or are you going to be happy enough with something like the Wraith Prism that comes right in the box? I do certainly think that AMD did a pretty damn good job of, producing these Prism coolers and being able to keep the CPU decently cool and also not sounding like a turbine jet engine like some of those Intel coolers do. So, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. If you did enjoy the video or you learned something new, don't forget to leave a like on it down below and subscribe if you're not already. And if you have been here for a while, you can always hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of content here on the channel. And I will see you tomorrow for another video. Terra.